Hello, this is Ograni Publishing with our new original work on the Romanticism channel, narrated by Vladislav Serpukov. We hope you enjoy listening. Tristan Oakley, Viscount and heir to the earldom, stood by the high window in the library of Earl Rutland's mansion, watching the last rays of the sun paint the London rooftops a copper hue. His fingers gripped the windowsill so tightly his knuckles turned white. Behind him, deep in the room, Earl Rutland was unhurriedly pouring brandy into crystal glasses. His movements were measured, almost lazy, like a man with nothing to fear. "Did you misunderstand me, my lord?" The earl's voice was polite, but mockery laced through it. "My daughter Isabella never gave you any promises. If you mistook ordinary social courtesy for something more." Tristan turned slowly. Rutland was holding out a glass to him with a smile that had said everything. Superiority, contempt, triumph. The old man knew he had won. He knew it from the very beginning. "Ordinary social courtesy," Tristan repeated quietly. He didn't touch the brandy. 3 years. For 3 years your daughter accepted my courtship, danced only with me, walked in Kew Gardens, allowed me to give her flowers, read my letters, and answered them as a well-bred lady should. The earl parried unperturbed. "Isabella has always been a model of good breeding. She could not refuse Viscount Oakley her courtesy. That would have been impolite." Tristan chuckled briefly without a shadow of mirth. "Impolite, I see." He finally accepted the glass but didn't drink. He simply held it, feeling the crystal chill his palm. "And announcing an engagement to the Duke of Clarence 2 weeks before I intended to ask for her hand. That, I suppose, is the height of courtesy." Rutland shrugged and sank into an armchair by the fireplace. Though no fire burned there, it was too hot. He stretched out freely, casually crossing his legs. "The Duke of Clarence is a brilliant match. He is 62, but healthy, wealthy, and childless. My Isabella will become a duchess. In a few years, perhaps a wealthy dowager duchess with complete freedom. You offered her only the title of Viscountess and await until your father, Earl Oakley, deigns to depart for the next world. Forgive me, my lord, but you lost before you even began to play." The words fell into the silence of the library like stones into stagnant water. Tristan stood motionless, outwardly calm. His suit was impeccable, his hair neatly slicked back, his face impassive. Only in his eyes, dark, almost black in this light, did something dangerous splash. "So, all this time," he said quietly, too quietly, "she was just amusing herself." "Let's just say," the earl took a sip of brandy, savoring the taste, "she kept you in reserve, just in case things didn't work out with the Duke. But fortunately, everything worked out perfectly. The wedding is set for September. You are, of course, invited. Isabella so hopes you will come. She has always valued your friendship." Friendship. 3 years. Tristan had spent 3 years of his life on a woman who looked at him like an amusing toy, who smiled when he read her poetry, who allowed him to hope, dream, and plan a future. He placed the untouched glass on the edge of the table, very carefully, very slowly. "Convey my congratulations to Lady Isabella." His voice sounded flat, lifeless. "And my gratitude for the lesson. You both taught me a priceless lesson." The earl chuckled. "Which one exactly?" Tristan stepped toward the door, but turned back at the threshold. His face remained dispassionate, but something hard and merciless flared in his eyes. Never to trust beautiful words again. The door closed behind him quietly, without a slam. Tristan Oakley did not slam doors. His upbringing did not allow it. But as he descended the marble staircase of the Rutland mansion, he felt something inside him breaking. Slowly, methodically, with a snap. He had believed Isabella, believed every look, every smile. A fool. An arrogant, blind fool. A footman handed him his hat and cane. Tristan walked out into the street where his carriage, dark blue with the Oakley crest on the door, was already waiting. The coachman was dozing on the box. The horses snorted quietly, swishing their tails against the flies. "To the club, my lord?" the coachman inquired, jumping down to open the door. Tristan froze. To the club? To listen to gossip? To see pity in the eyes of friends, or worse, the smirks of rivals? All of London already knew. Earl Rutland had surely seen to that. Viscount Oakley, the rejected suitor, the loser who was used and discarded. No, he cut him off. Home. He climbed into the carriage and slammed the door himself, not waiting for help, flopped onto the soft seat, leaned his head back, and closed his eyes. God, how he wanted to get drunk into oblivion, to erase these 3 years from his memory, as if they had never happened. The carriage started moving, wheels clattering over the cobblestones. London floated past the window. Street lamps began to light up. Passers-by hurried about their business. The city lived and breathed, not noticing that Tristan Oakley's world was collapsing. Women, he muttered into the emptiness of the carriage. They are all liars, every single one. And then he said it, without thinking, in the heat of the moment, out of pain, resentment, and rage. I swear, I will marry the first woman I meet. A beggar, a maid, anyone. Just not another calculating beauty who sees only a title and money in me. The words hung in the air, a foolish, reckless vow torn from despair. Tristan knew it himself, but he didn't care. Let the whole world go to hell along with Isabella, her father, and their vile intrigues. He leaned back against the seat again, closing his eyes when he heard it. A sound, quiet, almost imperceptible. A sob. Tristan froze. No, he must have imagined it. There was no one in the carriage but him. The coachman was on the box. The footman stayed at the Rutland mansion. Again, a quiet, stifled sob coming from somewhere below. He sat up and looked down. On the floor of the carriage, curled into a ball under the opposite seat, a girl was hiding. Tristan blinked, then blinked again. No, she didn't disappear. A real, live girl in a crumpled dress with disheveled dark hair, trembling with fear or cold, or both. What in the name of all saints? He began, but I cut himself off. She slowly raised her head, and their eyes met. Good Lord, she was about 18, no more. Her face was pale, exhausted, with tear tracks on her cheeks. Huge gray eyes frightened like a trapped animal. Her lips trembled. On her left cheek, a fresh bruise reddened. Forgive me, she whispered. Please forgive me. I didn't mean to. I had nowhere to go. Her voice broke, words tangling. She tried to crawl out from under the seat awkwardly, frantically, as if preparing to be thrown out onto the pavement. Tristan looked at her, unable to move. His mind tried to process what was happening in his carriage. Hiding. A girl. Who are you? He asked finally. She climbed onto the seat, shrinking into the corner, pressing against the upholstery as if she wanted to dissolve into it. Her dress had once been decent, of good fabric, but was now crumpled, torn at the shoulder seam. The puffed sleeves were crushed, the bodice twisted to the side, dark chestnut hair escaping her hairstyle and falling onto her shoulders. She swallowed. I am Aurora. Aurora Rutland. Tristan went cold. A Rutland? She nodded, still shrinking away. I am Isabella's cousin, the daughter of the Earl's younger brother. My father died 3 years ago, and my mother and I were taken into my uncle's house out of charity. Isabella's cousin. Of course. Tristan vaguely recalled the Earl mentioning relatives living with him out of charity. Poor relations, convenient servants, free labor, objects of contempt. He looked at the bruise on her cheek. Who hit you? She flinched. Her hand instinctively reached for her face, covering the mark. Uncle Earl. Today I broke his favorite vase, Chinese porcelain, accidentally, but he wouldn't listen. Her voice broke. She bit her lip, turning away toward the window. Tristan was silent, picturing Earl Rutland, a man who considered people pawns in his game, who used his own daughter as a commodity for a profitable deal. What did he care about a poor niece? And you decided to run away, he stated. Hid in the first carriage you found. Aurora nodded without looking at him. I knew Uncle was receiving guests, saw from the window as carriages arrived. I thought if I hide in one of them, maybe I'll get far away from this house, at least for a while. She finally turned to him, despair in her eyes. I didn't know it was your carriage, my lord. I didn't know, I swear. Tristan leaned back, processing the absurdity of the situation. He had just vowed to marry the first woman he met, and immediately, as if in a mockery of fate, a girl appeared in his carriage. Poor, beaten, desperate, the cousin of the very Isabella who had trampled on his heart. The irony was so blatant, he almost laughed. Almost. Where were you planning to run? He asked. Aurora shook her head in confusion. I don't know, to a friend, maybe, or, or to a shelter. I heard there are charity houses for people like me. She said it simply, without self-pity, as if she had long resigned herself to the fact that her place was at the very bottom. Tristan suddenly felt a strange sensation. Not pity, no, something else. Recognition, perhaps. They had both been discarded today. She by relatives, he by love. The carriage swayed rhythmically, carrying them through nocturnal London. Where to? Home. To his empty mansion, where the servants would soon spread the news of his humiliation all over the city. What if? The thought came suddenly. Mad, wild, but for some reason it didn't frighten him. On the contrary, it filled him with a strange resolve. He would marry the first woman he met. He had made a vow. Let it be not just empty words thrown out in haste. How old are you, Ishto? He asked abruptly. Aurora flinched at the suddenness. 18. I turned 18 in May. Do you have parents besides your deceased father? My mother, she lives at uncle's. She is ill, rarely gets out of bed. So legally you are free. She looked at him uncomprehendingly. My lord, I don't understand. Tristan leaned forward, his dark eyes pierced her. Marry me. Silence, long deafening silence. Aurora opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. A blush appeared on her cheeks. A strange contrast to the bruise. Are you joking? No. His voice sounded absolutely serious. I am completely serious. Marry me, right now, tonight. But, but that's impossible. You don't even know me. I am nobody. A penniless relative everyone has abandoned. That is exactly why you are perfect. Tristan cut her off. She looked at him as if he had gone mad. Maybe he had, but he didn't care. You want to leave your uncle, he continued, forever, so that he never dares touch you again. I do, she whispered. God, how I want that. Then become my wife, Viscountess Oakley. But why? Her voice trembled. Why do you want this? I can give you nothing. No dowry, no connections, no... You can give me revenge, he interrupted coldly. Aurora fell silent. Your uncle and cousin just destroyed 3 years of my life, Tristan continued, every word clipped and hard. They played with me like a puppet, used me, threw me away. Earl Rutland sat in his chair and laughed at me. Laughed. He clenched his fists. I want to wipe that smile off his face. I want him to know. I married his niece, made her a viscountess, the very niece he beats and treats like a servant. She is now higher in rank than his precious Isabella. A viscountess versus a duchess? Perhaps not, but I will show them all that I don't care about their intrigues. He spoke and the words poured out like poison, bitter, angry, desperate. Aurora listened without interrupting. An understanding dawned in her eyes. You want to use me for revenge? She said quietly. Tristan didn't lie. Yes. And after, when you have your revenge, what will happen to Mom? He shrugged. You will remain my wife, live in my house, bear my name. I won't get rid of you if that's what you mean. You will have a roof over your head, clothes, food, a decent existence. It's better than a shelter. She was silent, thinking. Tristan saw fear and hope battling in her eyes, despair and a cautious, timid chance. And if I refuse, she asked finally, then I will let you out wherever you say, and we will part ways as if we never met. Aurora looked out the window. London behind the glass was dark, alien, indifferent. She remembered her uncle's house, the slaps, the hunger, the humiliation, her mother unable to protect her, Isabella looking at her like dirt under her feet. And this man offered her a way out. Not out of love, but out of revenge. But did that matter to her? She had no choice, nothing, only this chance. She turned to Tristan and nodded. All right, she said, I will marry you. St. George's Church in Mayfair was almost empty. Candles burned sparingly, just a few at the altar, casting trembling shadows on the stone vaults. It smelled of incense and the dampness of old walls. Outside the high windows, the night thickened. while inside reigned that special silence found only in ancient temples. Heavy, dense, as if woven from prayers and vow, Tristan stood before the altar, looking at the priest, an old vicar with a kind, tired face, who clearly didn't understand what was happening, but was too polite to ask unnecessary questions, especially when Viscount Oakley placed a heavy purse of gold on the table. "Will the rite be valid?" Tristan asked quietly. The vicar nodded. "Of course, my lord. With two witnesses and your mutual consent, the marriage will be legal before God and the king. Although," he hesitated, "forgive me, but wouldn't you wish to wait until morning? Conduct the ceremony in the light of day? Invite guests?" "No," Tristan cut him off. "Now." Aurora stood nearby, slightly behind, silent. She still couldn't believe this was happening in reality. An hour ago, she was hiding in a carriage, trembling with fear. And now she stood in a church about to wed a stranger, Viscount Oakley. She stole a glance at him. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and sharp features, handsome in that cold, almost cruel manner that makes the heart stop. He was dressed impeccably. Dark blue tailcoat, snowy white cravat, silk waistcoat. Everything perfectly ironed, every crease in place. And she, Aurora, looked at her dress, crumpled, with a torn sleeve she had somehow pinned with a pin borrowed from the coachman. "I need to change," she whispered. Tristan turned to her. His gaze slid over her figure quickly, appraisingly. "Why?" "I look inappropriate for a wedding." He chuckled briefly, without joy. "A wedding at midnight with a stranger picked up in a carriage. This whole thing already looks inappropriate. One dress won't make a difference." Aurora pressed her lips together. He was right. It was all absurd from start to finish. "However," Tristan added, "after the ceremony, we will go to my house. There you will have everything you need. Clothes, a room, servants." The promise sounded mundane, like a report on another purchase. Aurora nodded, not knowing what else to say. Witnesses were found quickly. Tristan's coachman, an elderly man with gray sideburns, who treated the proceedings with the equanimity of a man who had seen everything in life, and the church watchman, a young lad who agreed for half a crown. The vicar opened a worn book, cleared his throat, and began, "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in the sight of God." The words sounded solemn, but Tristan barely listened. He looked at the stained glass above the altar, at Archangel Michael trampling the dragon with a sword. The bright colors of the glass shimmered dimly in the candlelight. Somewhere deep in his soul, he understood he was committing madness. Marrying a girl he saw for the first time half an hour ago. Marrying out of revenge, resentment, out of a desire to hurt those who hurt him. But it was too late to stop, and he didn't want to. "Tristan Henry Oakley," the vicar pronounced, "do you take Aurora Margaret Rutland to be your wife, to love and to cherish in sorrow and in joy, in wealth and in poverty, until death do you part?" "I do," he answered firmly. The vicar turned to Aurora. "Aurora Margaret Rutland, do you take Tristan Henry Oakley to be your husband?" "I do," she exhaled before the priest finished. Her voice trembled, but the words rang clear. Tristan held out his hand. She placed her palm in his, small, cold, trembling. He felt her thin fingers squeeze, as if grabbing a lifeline. They didn't have a ring. Tristan pulled his own gold signet ring with the Oakley crest off his pinky finger and slid it onto her finger. The ring was too big. It dangled, threatening to slip off. "I'll order a proper one later," he muttered. Aurora nodded, clenching her hand into a fist so the ring wouldn't fall. "In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit," the vicar proclaimed, making the sign of the cross over them, "I pronounce you husband and wife." Silence descended on the church. Tristan looked at the girl. No, now the wife before him. She raised her eyes to him, gray, huge, full of confusion. "You may kiss the bride," the vicar prompted gently. Tristan leaned in. Aurora froze, holding her breath. He touched his lips to her forehead, quickly, almost formally, and straightened up. "Congratulations, my lady," he said dryly. "You are now Viscountess Oakley." She exhaled slowly. Viscountess. An hour ago she was nobody, a burden, an extra mouth to feed. And now, the coachman offered her his hand, helping her down the church steps. It was dark outside. Only rare street lamps burned along the road. The carriage waited at the gates. Tristan climbed in first, then extended a hand to her. When the door slammed shut and the carriage moved, they sat opposite each other in silence. Aurora looked out the window, watching the dark facades of houses float by. She tried to comprehend what had happened, but her thoughts tangled, refusing to form anything coherent. "I'm afraid we need to discuss a few things," Tristan broke the silence. Aurora turned to him. "About what?" "About our arrangement." He spoke in a businesslike manner, as if discussing the terms of a deal, which in fact was not far from the truth. "Tomorrow morning, all of London will show up and know about our marriage," he continued. "Rumors will spread quickly. Your uncle and Isabella will find out too. Likely, this will cause a stir." "A scandal," Aurora corrected. "Exactly." Tristan leaned back. "I do not intend to justify myself, or explain my actions. I married because I wanted to. Period. But you will have to withstand the onslaught. Questions, mockery, perhaps outright hostility." Aurora clasped her hands in her lap. "I am used to hostility, from servants and distant relatives." "Yes, but now all of high society will turn against you. Do you think they will forgive a poor niece for jumping up to marry a viscount? They will tear you apart at the first opportunity." She raised her chin and something stubborn flared in her eyes. "Let them try, I won't be afraid." Tristan looked at her more closely. Behind this fragile appearance, behind the tears and bruises, lay something more. The backbone, a will. He hadn't expected it. "Good," Fan said. "Then here is what we will do. In public, we portray a happy couple, or at least a decent one. No quarrels, scandals, or hints that the marriage is unsuccessful." "Understood." "In private life, each lives as they wish. You will have your own rooms. I will not intrude. You are free to dispose of your day. Buy as you want to read, read, walk, walk, hire music or drawing teachers, hire them." Aurora listened without interrupting. It all sounded too good to be true. "And marital duties?" she asked quietly, not looking at him. Tristan grimaced. "I am not a monster. I do not intend to demand from you what you are not ready to give. When and if you wish, we will discuss it, but for now you can sleep peacefully." Aurora exhaled with relief. She had feared this question most of all. Marrying a stranger was one thing, but sharing a bed with him? "Thank you," she whispered. Tristan nodded. The carriage turned onto a quiet street, then stopped before high gates. The coachman jumped from the box, opened the gates, and they drove onto the estate grounds. Oakley Manor stood deep in the garden, a three-story building of light stone with columns at the entrance and tall windows. Even at night, it looked majestic. Aurora couldn't help but gasp. "Is this where you live?" "This is where we live," Tristan corrected, getting out of the carriage. He offered her his hand and she stepped onto the gravel, not taking her eyes off the house. Never in her life had she seen anything like it. Even her uncle's mansion, so huge and luxurious, paled before this. The door swung open, and a butler appeared on the threshold, elderly, with gray temples and impeccable bearing. Seeing Tristan, he bowed. "My lord, welcome home. We did not expect you so late." His gaze fell on Aurora, disheveled in a dirty dress with a bruise on her face. The butler's eyebrows twitched, but he showed no sign. "Hampton," said Tristan, climbing the steps. "Allow me to introduce Lady Oakley, my wife." If Hampton was shocked, he didn't show it. Only for a moment did a muscle twitch near his eye. "My lord, congratulations," he uttered finally, bowing slightly lower to Aurora. "Lady Oakley, welcome to your home." Aurora nodded awkwardly, not knowing what to reply. Hampton stepped aside, letting them into the hall. Inside, it smelled of beeswax and lavender. A huge chandelier hung from a painted ceiling. The marble floor gleamed in the light of candelabras. A staircase, wide with carved railings, led to the second floor. "Wake Mrs. Gilbert," Tristan ordered the butler. "Have her prepare rooms for Lady Oakley and order a warm bath." "Immediately, my lord." Hampton disappeared into the depths of the house. Tristan led Aurora through the hall into the drawing room. The room was furnished with exquisite taste. Velvet sofas, paintings in gilded frames, a fireplace of white marble. On a small table stood a tray with a decanter and glasses. A drink? Tristan offered, heading to the table. No, thank you. He poured himself some port, took a sip, and turned to her. For a while they stood in silence. He by the fireplace, she in the middle of the room as if afraid to touch anything. Don't be afraid. Then, Tristan said. Nothing here will bite you. Aurora tried to smile, but it came out crooked. I've just never been in a house like this. Now it is your house. She walked slowly through the room, examining the details. Porcelain figurines on the mantelpiece, heavy drapes of burgundy velvet, a Persian rug underfoot. Everything here breathed wealth, but not ostentatious. Natural, ingrained in the walls like patina on old silver. My lord, a woman of about 50 appeared in the doorway in a dark dress and white cap. Hampton said that... She stumbled, looking at Aurora. My wife, Tristan repeated patiently. Viscountess Oakley, prepare the southern rooms for her and see that the maids bring everything necessary. Mrs. Gilbert blinked, digesting the information, then curtsied. Of course, my lord. Lady Oakley, allow me to escort you. Aurora cast a glance at Tristan. He nodded. Go, freshen up, rest. We'll talk in the morning. She followed the housekeeper up the stairs, through a suite of rooms, down a long corridor. Mrs. Gilbert was silent, but Aurora felt her appraising gaze sliding over the torn dress, the disheveled hair. Finally, they stopped before a carved door. The housekeeper threw it open, and Aurora entered a room that took her breath away. A huge bedroom in white and blue tones, a four-poster bed with silk curtains, a dressing table with a mirror, a wardrobe, windows overlooking the garden, and a copper bath already filled with water, steaming gently. Is this all for me? Aurora whispered. Of course, my lady. Mrs. Gilbert went to the wardrobe, taking out a nightgown. There are no longlets for you here yet, but tomorrow we will fix everything. For now, you may use this. She placed a simple but high-quality nightgown of fine cambric on the bed. If you need anything, pull the cord by the bed. A maid will come immediately. I wish you a good night, my lady. The housekeeper left, quietly closing the door behind her. Aurora was left alone. She slowly sank onto the edge of the bed, unable to hold back tears. They flowed on their own, quiet, relieved, washing away the fear, the tension, the horror of this day. She cried without making a sound, simply letting the tears flow. Then she stood up, pulled off the dirty dress, and sank into the bath. The water was hot, smelling of lavender. Aurora closed her eyes, immersing herself in the warmth, feeling the fatigue, tension, and pain leave her. She was free. No one would raise a hand against her anymore. No one would force her to sleep in a closet. No one would look at her with contempt. Let this marriage be a deal. Let her husband not love her and never love her. Let it all be for revenge. She didn't care. She was alive. She was safe. And for now, that was enough. Tristan stood in his bedroom, looking out the window at the night garden. The port in his glass had gone cold, but he didn't drink, just held it, swirling the crystal in his fingers. What had he done? Married a girl he didn't know, out of revenge, out of resentment, out of a desire to prove that he wasn't the fool they took him for, that he knew how to play too. He chuckled bitterly. Earl Rutland would find out tomorrow morning. Isabella too. Imagining their faces, it was almost sweet. Almost. But then what? Then he had to live with this girl, Aurora, his wife. He remembered her face, pale, frightened, but with that stubborn spark in her eyes. Let them try. I won't be afraid. Maybe she wouldn't be afraid, or maybe she would break at the first collision with society. Tristan finished the cold port and hurled the glass into the fireplace. The crystal shattered into fragments with a ring. Tomorrow a new life would begin for both of them, and God knows how it would all turn out. Aurora woke up from sunlight breaking through the thin curtains. For a moment she didn't understand where she was. The ceiling above her head was unfamiliar, painted with molding and gilding. The bed beneath her was soft, smelling of fresh linen and lavender. She lay on a feather bed, covered with a silk quilt, not on a hard, narrow cot in a closet as she had become accustomed to over the last 3 years. Memory returned gradually like waves rolling onto the shore. The carriage, Tristan Oakley, the church, the wedding, marriage. She slowly sat up, clutching the blanket to her chest. The room in daylight seemed even more unreal. Blue wallpaper with a silver pattern, white furniture with exquisite carving, a rug soft under bare feet. Everything here breathed peace and prosperity, things Aurora could only dream of. There was a knock at the door, quiet, delicate. "Come in," called Aurora, pulling the blanket higher. The door opened slightly, and a young maid in a starched apron with blonde hair neatly tucked under a cap slipped inside. She curtsied. "Good morning, my lady. I am Mary, your personal maid. Mrs. Gilbert ordered me to help you dress and prepare for breakfast." A personal maid. Aurora had never had personal servants. In her uncle's house, she herself served Isabella, helped her dress, combed her hair, laced her corset until her cousin was satisfied. "Thank you, Mary," she said uncertainly. The maid went to the window and threw open the curtains. Sunlight flooded the room, and Aurora saw the garden outside for the first time. Well-tended flower beds with roses, gravel paths, a fountain in the center. Everything was drowning in greenery and flowers. "What a beautiful view," she whispered. "Yes, my lady. The southern rooms have always been considered the brightest in the house." Mary brought a pitcher of water and poured it into a porcelain basin. "Allow me to help you wash." Aurora got out of bed, feeling strange. She was being served. She who had served others all her life. She washed with cool water, and Mary handed her a soft towel. "Mrs. Gilbert ordered clothes to be selected for you from the late Countess's wardrobe," the maid informed her, opening the wardrobe. "Of course, this is temporary until new dresses are sewn to your figure, but something should fit." The late Countess, Tristan's mother, presumably. Aurora vaguely remembered hearing about her death about 3 years ago. Consumption, it seemed. Mary took several dresses from the wardrobe and laid them on the bed. All of them were of good quality, though not the latest fashion. Aurora chose the simplest one of blue muslin with a high waist and short puffed sleeves. The dress turned out to be a little big in the shoulders, but the maid deftly pinning the excess, hiding the pins under a ribbon. "I'll do your hair now, my lady." Aurora obediently sat at the dressing table. Mary began to comb her hair carefully, not pulling, untangling every knot. Aurora looked at her reflection in the mirror. The bruise on her cheek had turned yellow at the edges, but was still conspicuous. She instinctively reached up to cover it. "Maybe a little powder?" Mary suggested tactfully. "Yes, please." The maid took out a box of cosmetics and powdered Aurora's face. The bruise didn't disappear completely, but became less noticeable. Mary arranged her hair in a simple but elegant style, gathered at the back of the head, leaving a few curls to frame her face. "You are very pretty, my lady," she remarked with sincere admiration. "My lord is lucky." Aurora remained silent. She didn't explain that my lord cared absolutely nothing for her appearance, that their marriage was a cold and calculated deal. "Breakfast is served in the small dining room," Mary continued. "I will escort you." They went down the stairs. In the daylight, the mansion seemed even more majestic. The sun played on the crystal pendants of the chandelier, highlighted the gold on the picture frames, reflected in the polished parquet. The servants they met on the way bowed to Aurora with curiosity in their eyes. The news of the Viscount's sudden marriage had clearly flown around the entire house. The small dining room turned out to be not small at all, a spacious room with tall windows and a long table of dark wood. Tristan was already sitting at the table, looking through the morning newspaper. Before him stood a cup of coffee and a plate of toast he had barely touched. Hearing footsteps, he looked up. His gaze slid over Aurora quickly, appraisingly. Then he nodded. "Good morning. Sit down." "Good morning, my lord." Aurora sat on the chair opposite him. A footman pulled out the chair for her. Another placed a plate before her. There was so much food on the table that Aurora felt dizzy. Eggs, bacon, sausages, toast, gaines butter, fresh buns, fruit. "Tea or coffee, my lady?" inquired the footman. "Tea, please." They poured tea into an exquisite porcelain cup for her. Aurora took it, feeling her fingers tremble. Tristan continued reading the newspaper as if her presence was completely ordinary. "Well, did you sleep well?" he asked without looking up from the text. "Yes, thank you. The dress fits quite well." Mary adjusted it. Silence descended on the dining room, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner and the rustle of newspaper pages. Aurora cautiously took a bite of toast, not daring to take anything more substantial. Her stomach, unaccustomed to abundant food, clenched into a tight knot. Tristan finally put down the newspaper and looked directly at her. In the daylight, his face seemed tired. Shadows lay under his eyes. It seemed he hadn't slept any better than she had. "We need to talk," he said. Aurora set down her cup. "I'm listening." "Today after lunch, a modiste will come to us. You need a full wardrobe. Dresses for visits, for walks, for evenings, shoes, gloves, hats, everything a viscountess requires." "That is very generous," Aurora muttered. "It is necessary. You are my wife. I cannot have you walking around in my late mother's old dresses." He leaned back in his chair. "Also, I have hired a companion for you." Aurora raised her eyebrows in surprise. "A companion?" "Mrs. Darcy, an officer's widow, a quite respectable lady. She will accompany you on walks, on visits, teach you the rules of conduct in society." "You think I don't know the rules?" Offense sounded in Aurora's voice. Tristan grimaced. "I think the life of a poor relative prepares one poorly for the role of a viscountess. You will have to receive guests, attend balls, conduct polite conversation. Mrs. Darcy will help you settle in." Aurora pressed her lips together. He was right, of course. What did she know of high society life? Only what she had observed while serving Isabella, but admitting her own inexperience was humiliating. "As you say, my lord." "Tristan," he corrected. "When we are alone, call me by my name." "All right, Tristan." The name sounded strange on her lips, too intimate for people who barely knew each other. There was a knock at the door, and Hampton entered with a silver tray. On the tray lay letters, a whole stack. "My lord, the morning mail," he announced, handing the letters to Tristan. He took the first one, glanced at the seal, and smirked. "It has begun." He opened the envelope, scanned a few lines, then handed the letter to Aurora. "Read it." Aurora unfolded the sheet. The handwriting was sprawling, nervous. "Viscount Oakley, I demand immediate explanations regarding the scandalous rumor of your marriage to my niece. If this is true, you have committed a monstrous deception, taking advantage of the innocence of a minor girl. As her guardian, I have the right to annul this marriage and hold you accountable. I expect you today at 4 o'clock for a conversation. Earl Rutland." Aurora slowly folded the letter. Her hands were trembling. He wants to annul the marriage." "Let him try," Tristan replied calmly, opening the next letter. "But he won't be able to. You are 18. You gave your consent voluntarily before witnesses. The marriage is valid. But he was my guardian." "No, I am your guardian. I am your husband." Steel rang in his voice. Aurora looked at him, trying to understand what he was feeling. Gloating satisfaction? But Tristan's face remained impassive. He opened another letter, and this time his lips twisted into a grim smile. "And here is one from Isabella." Aurora involuntarily leaned forward. "What does she write?" Tristan didn't answer, just handed her the sheet. Isabella's handwriting was elegant, written with impeccable calligraphy. "Dear Tristan, I cannot believe the rumors that reached me this morning. They say you married my cousin Aurora. Can this really be true? The poor girl has completely lost her mind from grief if she ran away from home and forced herself on you. I am sure this is a misunderstanding, and you, as a noble man, will help her return to the family. My father and I are ready to forget and forgive everything. With unchanging affection, Isabella." Aurora finished reading and threw the letter on the table as if it had burned her fingers. "Forced herself," she hissed. "Lost her mind from grief. She thinks I'm a weak fool who is easy to return to their control." "She thinks you are a weak fool," Tristan finished. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. "Both of them underestimate the situation. What will you answer?" "Nothing." He gathered all the letters and threw them into the fireplace where embers from the morning fire still smoldered. The paper flared up, curling into ash. "Let them wait." Aurora watched the burning letters, feeling a strange mixture of relief and fear. Tristan didn't intend to give her back, but what would happen when her uncle showed up here when he started threatening, demanding? "Aren't you afraid?" she asked quietly. Tristan turned to her. "Of what?" "Of my uncle. His anger, the scandal. He chuckled coldly, almost cruelly. I was counting on it. Let him be angry. Let him seethe. That's in him. That is my revenge. He stood up from the table and walked to the window. Earl Rutland thought he crushed me, that I would swallow the humiliation and crawl away with my tail between my legs. But I showed him I can answer. I can strike where it hurts. And Aurora stood up too. I'm just a weapon in your game. Tristan turned to her. His gaze was heavy, impenetrable. You agreed to this. I know. She raised her chin. But that doesn't mean I like it. He stepped toward her, and in his movement was the dangerous grace of a predator. You wanted to run away from your uncle. I gave you a way out. You received a home, clothes, a position in society. What else do you need? Honesty, Aurora blurted out. At least a drop of honesty. You use me, just like my uncle used me. The only difference is that you feed me better. Silence hung between them, sharp, ringing. Tristan looked at her, and something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, anger, or something else. You are right, he said finally, his voice becoming quieter. I am using you, but you are also using me for salvation, for escape. We both get what we want. Is that not a fair deal? Aurora was silent. He was right again. Damn it. I don't ask for love, she continued, fighting the lump in her throat. I don't expect tenderness, but at least don't pretend that I mean something. That is worse. Tristan took a step back, turning away to the window. I never pretended. I know. Aurora wrapped her arms around herself. And that is perhaps the only thing I can be grateful to you for. They stood in silence. He by the window, she in the middle of the room, two strangers bound by marriage but separated by an abyss. Finally, Tristan broke the silence. The modiste will come at 3. Be ready, and then Mrs. Darcy will begin your lessons. Yes, my lord, Aurora replied dryly. He headed for the exit but stopped at the threshold without turning around. Aurora, I am not a good man. Perhaps I made a mistake marrying you, but I promise one thing. As long as you are my wife, no one will dare touch you. Not even your uncle. He left, leaving her alone. Aurora sank back onto the chair, feeling tears rise to her throat. She didn't cry, didn't allow herself to. Instead, she took the cup of cold tea and took a sip, forcing herself to swallow the bitterness. The modiste, Madame Lefebvre, arrived promptly at 3 o'clock. An elegant French woman of middle age with a sharp gaze and an even sharper tongue. She swept an appraising look over Aurora, clicked her tongue, and began taking measurements, muttering something in French. Too thin, she announced finally. But the figure isn't bad. Small bust, but a narrow waist. You'll be pretty if fattened up. Aurora stood with her arms raised while Madame Lefebvre wrapped a tape measure around her, writing numbers in a small notebook. What colors do you prefer, my lady? I don't know, Madame Lefebvre snorted. Then I will choose. Blue, pink, peach will suit you. No black. Too gloomy for a young lady. And white, of course. Muslin, silk, satin. Dresses for morning, for day, for evening. Ball gowns, walking dresses, capes, shawls, gloves. She scribbled the list with frightening speed. In a week, the first batch will be ready. Aurora listened, feeling dizzy. So many clothes, so much money. Before, she had 2 dresses, one for every day, the second for Sunday church service. When the modiste finally left, taking a stack of orders with her, Mrs. Darcy entered the drawing room. She turned out to be a woman of about 40, with a pleasant face and calm manners. A captain's widow, as Tristan had explained, left without means after her husband's death and earning a living as a companion. Lady Oakley, she curtsied slightly. Glad to meet you. Yes, thank you, Mrs. Darcy. Aurora invited her to sit. I'm afraid I am completely unfit to be a viscountess. Mrs. Darcy smiled gently. No one is born ready, my dear, but you are young and I am sure capable of learning. Let's start with the basics. How to properly receive guests, how to conduct conversation, how to dress for the occasion. She took a notebook out of her reticule. Also, we will need to learn the genealogies of the main aristocratic families. You must know who is related to whom so as not to make a blunder. The next 2 hours passed in lessons. Mrs. Darcy patiently explained the rules of etiquette, which Aurora greedily absorbed. How to hold a cup, how to bow, how to address people of different titles, what topics are permissible in conversation, which are not. By the end of the lesson, Aurora's head was spinning with information. Don't worry, Mrs. Darcy reassured her, preparing to leave. Everything will come with practice. The main thing is to carry yourself with dignity. You are a viscountess. Remember that. Viscountess. When Mrs. Darcy left, Aurora went into her bedroom and approached the mirror. The girl in the reflection looked at her with doubt. A viscountess? Just a frightened thin person in someone else's dress. She remembered Tristan's words. As long as you are my wife, no one will dare touch you. Maybe it was worth it. Maybe she could handle it. She had to handle it. Outside the window, it was beginning to get dark, and Aurora realized that for the first time in many years, she was not afraid of the night coming. Here, in this house, she was safe. For now. 3 days passed since the wedding, and Oakley Manor lived in a strange, tense anticipation. The servants whispered, casting curious glances at the new Viscountess. Tristan spent most of his time in the library or went away on business, appearing only for dinner. And Aurora rushed between lessons with Mrs. Darcy, fittings with Madame Lefebvre, and lonely walks in the garden. The morning of the 4th day turned out gray, covered with low clouds. Aurora stood by the window in the drawing room, watching the wind drive fallen rose petals across the gravel. She was wearing a new dress, the first of those ordered from the modiste, of pale pink muslin with embroidery along the hem. The puffed sleeves were gathered at the shoulder with satin ribbons. The high waist was emphasized by a belt. Mary had arranged her hair in a complex style, decorated with pearl pins. Aurora felt like a dressed-up doll, beautiful but alien to herself. "My lady," Hampton appeared in the doorway. "You have a guest." Aurora's heart plummeted. "Who?" "Earl Rutland, my lady. He is demanding a meeting quite insistently." So Uncle had come after all. She knew it would happen sooner or later, knew and feared it. "Where is Lord Oakley?" "His lordship is in the library. I have already informed him of the visit. He asked you to wait here." Aurora nodded, clenching her fingers into fists. Her palms were sweating. She wiped them on her dress and immediately checked herself. Ladies don't do that. Mrs. Darcy taught to always maintain external calm, no matter what was happening inside. Footsteps in the corridor, heavy, measured. The door swung open and Earl Rutland appeared on the threshold. He looked the same as always. A large man with a face red from the good life, in an expensive frock coat, with a gold watch chain stretched across his waistcoat. But now his face was not just red, but crimson with rage. His eyes, small and evil, dug into Aurora with such hatred that she involuntarily stepped back. "You," the Earl hissed, entering the room. "Little ungrateful." Aurora stepped back again, but tried to keep her voice steady. "Good day, Uncle." "Don't you dare call me Uncle," he barked, taking a step forward. "You have disgraced our family. Ran away like a thief, deceived your way into the Viscount's confidence." "I deceived no one," Aurora interrupted, surprised by her own boldness. "Lord Oakley himself proposed that I marry him." "Bullshit." The Earl came closer, looming over her. "You took advantage of his fortune, his resentment, to claw your way to a title. Do you think I don't understand? You were always a cunning rat, just like your pathetic father." The mention of her father cut deep. Aurora clenched her fists so hard her nails dug into her palms. "My father was a decent man, which cannot be said of you." The Earl raised his hand to strike. Aurora squeezed her eyes shut, expecting the blow, but the blow did not follow. She opened her eyes and saw Tristan. He stood between her and the Earl, having caught Rutland's hand in midair. His fingers gripped the Earl's wrist with such force that the man grimaced in pain. "Take your hand off my wife," Tristan said quietly. Too quietly. His voice was even, almost polite, but there was such a threat in it that Aurora felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. The Earl jerked, trying to pull his hand away, but Tristan didn't let go. "You forget yourself, Lord Oakley," Rutland hissed. "This is my niece, was." Tristan unclenched his fingers, releasing the Earl. "Now she is my wife, Viscountess Oakley, and if you raise a hand against her again, I will challenge you to a duel before witnesses." Silence reigned. The Earl rubbed his wrist, looking at Tristan with poorly concealed rage and something else. Caution. Duels were forbidden by law, but still happened among aristocrats, and Tristan Oakley was reputed to be an excellent shot. You haven't thought about the consequences of this marriage, the Earl began, changing tactics. The girl is 18. She understands nothing of high society life. You have made her a laughingstock. That is my concern, Tristan cut him off. Not yours. I am her guardian. Were. The marriage annulled your rights. The Earl took a step forward, and his face twisted. You married her to spite me, to spite Isabella. Do you think I don't realize that? This is revenge. Pathetic, petty revenge. Tristan chuckled, coldly, without a shadow of amusement. Perhaps, but the deed is done. We are wed. The marriage is legal, and nothing will force me to renounce it. We will find a way, hissed the Earl. I will go to court, prove that the marriage was concluded under duress. Try. Tristan's voice became even quieter, even more dangerous. Only consider this. I have witnesses who will confirm that your niece ran away from you because of beatings. My servants, the vicar, the coachman, saw the bruises on her face. If it comes to court, the truth about how you treated her will surface. Do you want all of London to know that the Honorable Earl Rutland beat a defenseless girl? The Earl's face turned even more purple. Aurora looked at Tristan, not believing her ears. He was defending her, really defending her, using the truth as a weapon. The Earl was choking with rage. You will regret this. Both of you will regret it. I will do everything to destroy you. Try, Tristan repeated, and now get out of my house and don't appear here again without an invitation. Earl Rutland stood breathing heavily, clenching and unclenching his fists, then turned and walked out, slamming the door loudly. The echo of the slam rolled through the mansion. Aurora exhaled, not even noticing that she had been holding her breath all this time. Her legs gave way and she sank onto the nearest chair, feeling her knees tremble. Tristan walked to the table with the decanter, poured her some water, and handed her the glass. Drink. She took the glass with trembling hands, took a sip. The water was cool and it calmed her a little. Thank you, she whispered. You didn't have to. I had to, Tristan interrupted. You are my wife. If I allow someone to raise a hand against you in my own house, what will they think of me? Of course, it was about reputation, not her. Aurora nodded, lowering her gaze. I understand. Tristan poured himself some brandy, drank it in one gulp, put the glass on the mantelpiece, and turned to her. He will return, or send lawyers, look for loopholes, ways to annul the marriage, and he will find them. No, he walked to the window, looking at the street where the Earl's carriage had just disappeared. The marriage was concluded correctly. There are witnesses. Your consent is recorded. The only thing he can try is to tarnish your reputation, spread rumors, turn society against you. Aurora smiled bitterly. Society is already turned against me. I am nobody. A poor relative. An upstart. Viscountess, Tristan reminded her, not turning around. Position obliges, and that is precisely why tonight we are going to a ball. Aurora flinched. What? What ball? At the Duchess of Devonshire's. She sent an invitation yesterday. He finally turned to her. Usually I would refuse, but now we need to appear in society, introduce you as my wife. Officially. But I'm not ready. Panic rose in her chest, squeezing her throat. I don't know how to behave at balls. I don't know how to dance. Mrs. Darcy taught me dances. Only 2 lessons. I barely remember the steps. That is enough. Tristan approached, stopped in front of her. You will dance only with me. The first dance, a waltz. I will lead, you follow. The rest of the time stand nearby, smile, answer politely to questions. Nothing more. And if they ask about our marriage, say it was love at first sight. He chuckled. A romantic story. I saw you, lost my head, couldn't resist. Something like that. Aurora looked at him doubtfully. And will anyone believe it? It doesn't matter if they believe it or not. What matters is that we give them a story, a version of events they can discuss. He walked away to the fireplace. Society loves gossip. Give them material, and they will be occupied. Aurora was silent, digesting the information. A ball. Tonight she would dance with Tristan in front of all London society, pretend to be a wife in love. "I don't have a suitable dress," she said weakly. "Madame Lefebvre sent 2 ball gowns yesterday evening. Mary has already taken them to your room." He glanced at his watch. "The ball starts at 8. You have 5 hours to prepare." He left, leaving her alone with a whirlwind of thoughts and fears. By 7 in the evening, Aurora was ready. Mary fussed over her for more than 2 hours, creating a fitting image. The dress turned out to be of white satin with silver embroidery on the bodice and hem. Puffed short sleeves revealed her shoulders. The neckline was deep but not provocative. The high waist was emphasized by a silver belt. The skirt flowed to the floor, rustling with every movement. Mary arranged her hair in a complex style, high with curls decorated with pearls and silver threads. Several thin strands descended to her neck, framing her face. When Aurora looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the reflection. Before her stood a stranger, elegant, graceful, almost beautiful. "You are beautiful, my lady," Mary exhaled admiringly. "My lord won't be able to take his eyes off you." Aurora wasn't sure about that. Tristan barely noticed her, spending only the necessary time with her at lunch or dinner, but now it didn't matter. The main thing was not to disgrace herself at the ball. She went down to the hall where Tristan was already waiting for her. He stood by the stairs in evening dress, black tailcoat, snowy white shirt with a high collar, black waistcoat, his hair neatly slicked in bow, cravat impeccably tied. Aurora searched for the word, impressive. Hearing her footsteps, he raised his head and froze. His gaze slid over her slowly, from her hairstyle to the hem of her dress, then back, lingering on her face. Something flashed in his eyes, surprise, admiration, but vanished so quickly Aurora didn't have time to understand. "You look suitable," he said finally. Suitable. Aurora didn't know whether to laugh or be offended. She descended the remaining steps, trying not to trip on the hem. Tristan offered her his hand. "The carriage is waiting." She placed her fingers in his palm, feeling the warmth of his skin penetrate through the thin glove. They went out into the street, where a ceremonial carriage stood at the porch with the Oakley crest on the doors, polished to a shine. The coachman helped her climb inside. Tristan sat opposite. The door slammed shut, and the carriage moved, swaying on its springs. Silence hung between them, awkward, tense. Aurora looked out the window, watching the street lamp-lit streets float by. London came alive in the evenings. Carriages scurried back and forth. Pedestrians hurried about their business. Laughter and music drifted from tavern windows. "You are nervous," Tristan stated. Aurora turned to him. "Yes. Don't show it. At the ball, everyone will be looking at you, looking for weaknesses, mistakes. Act confident, even if you are shaking with fear inside." "Like you?" He raised an eyebrow. "What?" "You always act confident, even when—" She stumbled. "Even when you are in pain." Tristan was silent, looking at her with an impenetrable expression, then chuckled. "That is called upbringing. A gentleman does not show emotions. You will learn too." "I'm not sure I want to," Aurora said quietly. "Living hiding everything you feel, it's like slowly dying inside." Something flickered in his eyes, pain, understanding. But he turned away to the window. "Welcome to high society." The carriage stopped in front of the Duchess of Devonshire's mansion, a huge building flooded with the light of hundreds of candles. Music poured from open windows. Guests arrived in a continuous stream. Carriages lined up in a queue. Ladies and gentlemen in luxurious outfits ascended the marble steps. Tristan got out first, offering Aurora his hand. She took it, feeling her heart pounding. Now her trial would begin, her debut in society as Viscountess Oakley. They climbed the steps, entered the vestibule where a footman met them. "Viscount and Viscountess Oakley!" His voice rang out loud, carrying the names through the hall. Conversations died down. Heads turned in their direction. Dozens, hundreds of eyes stared at Aurora. She froze, feeling the ground slip from under her feet. But Tristan's hand squeezed her fingers firmly, confidently, and he stepped forward, leading her with him. They entered the ballroom, and it began, whispers, glances, whispering behind fans. Ladies looked at Aurora with undisguised curiosity and disapproval, gentlemen with interest and mockery. That's her, the poor relative. They say she ran away from home. The Viscount has completely lost his head. Snatches of conversation drifted from all sides. Aurora walked with her chin up, trying not to show how scared she was. Tristan led her through the hall to the hostess of the ball, the Duchess of Devonshire, a majestic lady in a burgundy dress with diamonds in her hair. Viscount Oakley. The Duchess extended her hand to him, and he kissed it. What a surprise. We so rarely see you at balls. Your Grace, allow me to introduce my wife. Tristan turned to Aurora, Viscountess Oakley. The Duchess swept an appraising look over Aurora, cold, sharp as a razor blade. So it is true. You really married rather swiftly. When you meet the right person, why wait? Tristan replied with a slight smile. Oh, the right one, repeated the Duchess, and mockery sounded in her voice. She turned to Aurora. Welcome to society, my dear. I hope you are ready for what awaits you. Aurora curtsied. Thank you, Your Grace. They moved away, and Tristan led her to the edge of the hall where it was slightly less crowded. The orchestra began to play a waltz. Come. Tristan offered her his hand. Time to dance. Aurora placed her hand on his shoulder, feeling his palm grasp her waist. They began to circle in the dance, and the world around blurred into a whirl of lights, faces, music. Look at me, Tristan ordered quietly. Only at me. Forget about the others. She raised her eyes, meeting his gaze, dark, impenetrable, but for some reason calming. As long as she looked at him, the fear receded. They danced, and Aurora tried not to stumble, following his movements. He led confidently, supporting her, not letting her trip. You are doing well, he said. Ah, you are just a good partner. The corner of his lips twitched, almost a smile. Possibly. The music ended and they stopped. Aurora stepped back, but Tristan didn't let go of her hand. One more dance. She nodded and they swirled again. This time it was easier for her. She was beginning to feel the rhythm, understand the movements, almost enjoy it. But when the second dance ended, a woman approached them. Isabella. She was beautiful in a dress of gold silk, with diamonds in her ears and on her neck. Her hair arranged in perfect curls. Her smile sweet as poison. Tristan, she uttered softly. Aurora, what a meeting. Aurora felt Tristan's hand tense. Isabella, he replied coldly. Congratulations to you both on the marriage, Isabella continued, not taking her eyes off Aurora. Although I must admit, I am in shock. My poor cousin and Viscount Oakley. Who would have thought? Life is full of surprises, Tristan responded. Isabella stepped closer, lowering her voice. I hope you know what you're doing, Tristan. The girl, she doesn't fit into your circle. She won't last. That is none of your business, Aurora intervened. Isabella looked at her with surprise, then laughed. Oh, she has claws. How cute. She turned to Tristan. We will talk later, in private. She left, leaving behind a trail of perfume and poisonous sweetness. Aurora trembled with anger, fear, humiliation. Don't pay attention to her, Tristan said quietly. Easy to say. He looked at her, and in his eyes was something new, respect, sympathy. You are coping better than I expected, he said. Hold on a little longer. Soon we can leave. And they held on together in this hostile, brilliant, ruthless world. They returned from the ball well after midnight. The carriage rolled through the deserted streets of London, and only the clatter of hooves and the creak of wheels broke the silence. Aurora sat leaning back against the seat and looked out the window, seeing nothing. Fatigue lay like a heavy weight, not so much physical as mental. 3 hours. For 3 hours she stood at the ball under the aim of hundreds of curious, judgmental, mocking glances. Smiled when she wanted to run away, answered questions when she wanted to be silent. Stayed close to Tristan as if he were the only island of safety in a raging sea. You are tired, Tristan stated. It wasn't a question. Aurora nodded without turning her head. Very. You did well today. She turned to him. In the semi-darkness of the carriage, his face seemed tired, with sharp shadows under his cheekbones. Really? Really? He leaned back. The Duchess of Devonshire was impressed. Lord Chesterfield asked where I had been hiding you all these years. Even Lady Barrymore, known for her sharp tongue, admitted that you carry yourself with dignity. Aurora smiled bitterly. And still they consider me an upstart. Of course. But that is no longer important. The main thing is you gave them no reason to tear you to pieces. You stood your ground. Stood her ground. Aurora remembered how Isabella approached her again, closer to the end of the evening. How she whispered, smiling, "Enjoy it while you can, cousin. Soon Tristan will realize what a mistake he made, and then you will return to where you came from, to the dirt." Aurora had remained silent then, simply turned away, not showing how painfully those words wounded, because deep down she feared Isabella was right. The carriage stopped at Oakley Manor. The coachman opened the door and Tristan got out first, offering Aurora his hand. She accepted it, stepping down onto the gravel. The night air was fresh, smelling of roses from the garden and dampness. In the hall, Hampton met them, despite the late hour, impeccably dressed and unperturbed. "Welcome home, my lord. My lady, forgive me, but an urgent letter arrived for the Viscountess." Aurora raised her eyebrows in surprise. A letter for her? Hampton held out a silver tray with an envelope. Aurora took it with trembling fingers. The handwriting on the envelope was unfamiliar, rounded, diligent. She opened the letter, unfolded the sheet, read the first lines, and froze. "What is it?" asked Tristan. Aurora slowly raised her eyes to him. "It's from my mother." Tristan frowned. "What does she write?" Aurora looked at the letter again, rereading words that didn't fit in her head. "My dear Aurora, I learned of your marriage from the Earl. He is furious, but I am glad that you escaped, that you found a way out of this house. Forgive me for not being able to protect you. I was weak, sick, afraid. Afraid that if I took your side, the Earl would throw us both out onto the street. But now you are safe. You are a Viscountess. You have a husband who can shield you from the Rutlands. I do not ask for a meeting, do not want to cause you problems. Just know, I love you, always loved you, and pray that you are happy. Your mother." Aurora folded the letter, feeling a lump rise in her throat. Her mother, her weak, sick mother, who could never stand up for her, but at least wrote, at least tried to explain. "Good news?" Tristan asked cautiously. "I don't know," whispered Aurora. She is happy for me, but doesn't want to meet. Afraid of the Earl." "Yes." Tristan was silent for a while, then nodded. "If you want to see her, I will organize a meeting, in secret from the Earl." Aurora looked at him with surprise. "You would do that?" "Why not?" He shrugged. "She is your mother. You have a right to meet." Something warm stirred in Aurora's chest. Gratitude, perhaps, or something more. "Thank you," she said quietly. Tristan nodded and headed for the stairs. "Good night." "Good night," Aurora repeated, watching him go. When he disappeared upstairs, she reread her mother's letter once more, pressing it to her chest, a small sign that she was not entirely alone in this world. The following days passed in a strange routine. In the morning, lessons with Mrs. Darcy. After lunch, walks in the park accompanied by the companion. In the evening, dinner with Tristan, taciturn and formal. They lived in the same house but seemingly in different worlds. Tristan was polite, even attentive, but kept his distance. No personal conversations, no attempts to know her better. Aurora tried not to think about it, tried to focus on lessons, on her new life, but sometimes, especially at night when she lay alone in the huge bed, loneliness rolled over her. She had married but remained alone. A week passed, then another. July came into its own, bringing heat in long, light evenings. Lilies bloomed in the garden. Their sweet scent penetrated the house through open windows. One morning when Aurora was walking in the gardener approached her, an old, withered man named Mr. Parker. "My lady," he took off his hat, bowing, "would you care to look at the greenhouse? The roses have just bloomed." The greenhouse. Aurora didn't know the estate had a greenhouse. "Yes, my lady, behind the garden, closer to the stables. The late Countess loved it very much, but after her death, almost no one goes there." Curiosity won out. Aurora followed Mr. Parker along a winding path skirting the house. Behind a hedge appeared a glass structure, a small greenhouse with tall windows and an open-work dome. Mr. Parker opened the door, and Aurora stepped inside. The air here was humid, warm, saturated with the scents of flowers and earth. Sunlight penetrating through the glass ceiling played on leaves and petals. Roses were everywhere, white, pink, scarlet, yellow, climbing along the walls, gathered in bushes, blooming in tubs. The beauty took her breath away. "It is beautiful," whispered Aurora, approaching the nearest bush and carefully touching a delicate petal with her fingers. "The Countess bred these varieties herself," Mr. Parker reported with pride. "Some are very rare. I continue to care for them as she bequeathed." Aurora slowly walked around the greenhouse, examining the flowers, inhaling their scent. It was quiet, peaceful here. Here one could forget about balls, gossip, the coldness of her husband. "May I come here?" she asked. "Of course, my lady. You are the mistress of the house. The greenhouse is at your disposal." From that day on, Aurora spent several hours daily in the greenhouse. She helped Mr. Parker care for the roses, learned to prune, water, and fertilize them. The work calmed her, distracted her from anxious thoughts. One evening, when she was fussing with a bush of white roses, the greenhouse door opened. Turning, Aurora saw Tristan. He stood on the threshold, still in his day suit, with the collar of his shirt unbuttoned. His gaze slid over the greenhouse, then stopped on her. "I was looking for you," he said. "Hampton said you were here." Aurora rose from her knees, brushing earth from her hands. She was wearing a simple house dress of gray muslin. Her hair had half escaped her hairstyle. She realized she looked inappropriate for a viscountess, but she didn't care. "Did something happen?" she asked. Tristan shook his head, entering. He slowly walked around the greenhouse, examining the roses. "Mother loved this place," he said quietly. "Spent whole days here. Said roses are the only creatures that don't lie." Aurora was silent, watching him. For the first time in all these weeks, he was talking about something personal. "She died 3 years ago," Tristan continued, stopping by a bush of scarlet roses. "Consumption. Doctors could do nothing. I was with her until the end. Held her hand when she—" He cut himself off. Aurora stepped closer. "Were you close?" "Yes." He touched a petal with his fingers carefully as if afraid to damage it. "She was the only person who understood me. After her death, I closed myself off. Decided I wouldn't let anyone close again. And then you met Isabella," Aurora finished quietly. Tristan chuckled bitterly. "Yes. Thought she was like mother. Kind, gentle, sincere. What a blind fool I was." Aurora didn't know what to say. She saw pain in his eyes, old, deep, never healed. "Isabella used you," she said. "But that doesn't mean all women are like that." "I know." He turned to her. "You, for example, are completely different. You don't pretend, don't try to please. You say what you think." He stepped closer. "It is refreshing." Aurora felt a blush flood her cheeks. Compliments from Tristan were a rarity. "I just don't know how to pretend," she muttered. "All the better." They stood close, and Aurora suddenly realized how tall he was, how broad his shoulders were, how attractive his gaze was. She stepped back, her breath hitching. "Did you want to tell me something?" Tristan blinked, as if waking from a trance. "Yes. Tomorrow evening we have a reception. Several couples from high society, dinner, cards, polite conversation. You will have to play the role of hostess." Panic pricked in her chest. I'm not sure I'm ready." "You are ready," Tristan said firmly. "Mrs. Darcy prepared you. Mrs. Gilbert will organize everything. You need only smile and be gracious. You will manage." Aurora swallowed. "All right, I'll try." He nodded and headed for the exit, but stopped at the threshold. "Aurora, you really are handling the role of Viscountess well. I am proud of you." He left, leaving her standing among the roses with a wildly beating heart. "Proud of you." 3 words she never expected to hear from him. The reception took place the next evening. 6 couples arrived, all from the upper circles of society. Lord and Lady Fairfax, Sir George and Mrs. Winthrop, Earl and Countess Lancaster. Aurora met them in the hall, dressed in a new evening gown of peach silk with silver embroidery. Her hair was styled high, with a pearl tiara. She smiled, greeted, conducted polite conversation, as Mrs. Darcy had taught. Dinner went smoothly. The table was set with impeccable taste. Porcelain, crystal, silver shone in the light of candelabras. Dishes followed one another. Soup, fish, meat, desserts. Wine flowed like a river. Aurora sat at the head of the table opposite Tristan and followed the conversation. They talked of politics, hunting, the latest news from the continent. She inserted remarks when appropriate, remained silent when needed. "Do tell, Lady Oakley," Countess Lancaster addressed her, a stout lady with a sharp gaze. "Is it true that your marriage was quite swift?" Aurora felt her shoulders tense. Here it was, the question she expected and feared. "Yes," she answered calmly. "The Viscount and I knew each other for a short time. But sometimes one does not need much time to realize one has met a kindred spirit." The words sounded convincing. Even she herself almost believed them. The Countess smiled skeptically. "How romantic. Although society, prefers more traditional unions." "Society loves gossip," Tristan intervened. His voice was light, but steel laced through it. "Fortunately, my wife and I do not care too much about others' opinions." The Countess fell silent, sipping her wine. Tristan looked at Aurora, and in his gaze was something new. Support. Solidarity. After dinner, the guests moved to the drawing room. The men played cards and smoked cigars. The women sat by the fireplace, discussing fashion and gossip. Lady Fairfax, a young woman with a doll-like appearance, leaned toward Aurora. "Tell me, my dear, how did you manage to win the Viscount's heart? So many girls tried, but he was impregnable." Aurora smiled, though everything inside clenched. "I'm afraid that is a question for him, not me." "But there must be some secret," Lady Fairfax persisted. "No secret," Countess Lancaster intervened coldly. "The girl simply happened to be in the right place at the right time. The Viscount was vulnerable after the story with Lady Isabella. So she didn't finish, but the meaning was clear. Took advantage of the situation, lured him into a trap with cunning." Aurora felt anger boiling inside. She could have remained silent, could have swallowed the insult, but something inside rebelled. "You are right, Countess," she said, rising. "I really was in the right place. Having run away from a cruel guardian who beat me and starved me, the Viscount offered me salvation, and I accepted it. That makes me calculating, perhaps, but it also makes me alive." She looked the Countess straight in the eye. "Forgive me, but it seems to me survival is not a crime." Silence descended on the drawing room. Everyone looked at Aurora, some with shock, some with curiosity, some with respect. Tristan rose from the card table and approached her, placing a hand on her shoulder. Warm, firm. "My wife is right," he said calmly. "She overcame circumstances that would have broken many, and I am proud to call her my wife." Countess Lancaster paled, pursing her lips. The other guests exchanged glances. Awkwardness hung in the air, but Aurora was no longer afraid. She had told the truth, and Tristan had stood by her side. The evening ended early. The guests departed, leaving behind a trail of understatement and tension. When the last carriage disappeared beyond the gates, Aurora sank onto the sofa in the drawing room, feeling the tension fall from her. "I ruined everything," she whispered. "I shouldn't have spoken." "You told the truth," Tristan interrupted, sitting beside her. "And that is right. But now they will respect you more." He turned to her. "You showed character, didn't allow yourself to be humiliated. That is more important than 1,000 smiles." Aurora looked at him. "Do you really think so?" "Yes." He reached out and, to her surprise, covered her hand with his. "Aurora, I know our marriage isn't what girls dream of, but you have become part of my life, and I am glad you are here." Her heart stopped. He held her hand, simply held it, saying nothing more. But in this touch was more intimacy than in all the weeks of their marriage. "I am glad too," she whispered. They sat in silence, not letting go of hands. Outside the window, night was falling, and somewhere in the garden, a nightingale sang. Something was changing between them. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, but changing. August brought stifling heat to London. The city suffocated under a leaden sky. Dust hung in the air, and even evenings brought no relief. Many aristocratic families had already left for their country estates, escaping the heat and stuffiness. But Tristan was in no hurry to leave the capital, and Aurora didn't ask why. She knew. As long as they were in London, Earl Rutland was in sight. Tristan seemed to keep a finger on the pulse, watching every move of his enemy. Several times rumors reached them that the Earl tried to turn society against them, spread gossip about the haste of the marriage, about the unequal status. But society, strangely enough, sided with the young Viscountess. The story of the cruel guardian and the rescue of the poor relative turned out to be too romantic to ignore. Besides, at that ill-fated reception, Aurora had shown herself not as a timid mouse, but as a woman with character. That made an impression. The relationship between Aurora and Tristan was also changing. Not abruptly, not dramatically, slowly, like a rosebud opening. They dined together more often, discussing the past day. Sometimes in the evenings they played chess in the library, and Tristan unexpectedly turned out to be a patient teacher. Aurora lost game after game, but each time learned to see a move ahead. One evening, when she once again put her king under attack, Tristan chuckled. "You are too impulsive. You act without thinking." "But honestly," Aurora parried, removing the piece from the board, "honesty doesn't help in war." "Are we at war?" She raised her eyes, meeting his gaze. Something flickered in the dark depths. Warmth, almost tenderness. "No," he said quietly. "We are not." After that, he began to come into the greenhouse when she was working there. At first briefly, for a few minutes, then longer and longer. They talked about roses, about the weather, about trifles, but sometimes the conversation went further. "Why did you choose me specifically?" Aurora asked one day, pruning wilted flowers. "Anyone could have been in that carriage." Tristan stood by the greenhouse window, looking at the garden. He was silent so long she decided he wouldn't answer. "Because you looked at me without pity," he uttered finally. "That evening in the carriage you were frightened, but you didn't pity me, didn't try to comfort me, just accepted the situation." He turned to her. It was refreshing. Aurora lowered the shears. "I was too scared to pity anyone." "All the better. I don't need pity. Never needed it." They looked at each other across the space of the greenhouse, and the air between them seemed to thicken, filling with something unspoken. Tristan averted his gaze. "I need to go to the club until evening." He left, leaving her among the roses with a pounding heart and thoughts she was afraid to formulate. A letter arrived in mid-August. Aurora recognized the handwriting immediately. A letter from her mother, but this time the envelope was sealed. An ink blot smeared across the paper. She opened it with trembling hands and read, "Aurora, forgive me for writing again. I know I promised not to bother you, but I am scared. The Earl found out I am corresponding with you. He is furious. This morning he threw me out of my room, ordered me to move to the closet in the attic. Said since I am on the traitor's side, I will live like a servant. I am cold. My lungs hurt. The cough has worsened. They won't call a doctor. Say it's my own fault. I don't know how much longer I will last, but I wanted you to know. I don't regret writing to you. You are my daughter, my only joy in this life. If you can, pray for me. Your mother." Aurora read and reread the letter, feeling cold fury rise inside. Her mother, her sick, weak mother, thrown into a closet like a dog. She bolted from her place and rushed to the library where Tristan was reviewing business papers. Burst in without knocking, holding out the letter to him. "Read it." He took the letter, frowning, scanned the text, and his face darkened. "When did this arrive?" "Just now, Tristan. We must do something. She is dying there." He stood up from the table, walked to the window, silent, thinking. Aurora waited, clenching her hands into fists, feeling every second drag on painfully long. "We will get her," he said finally. Aurora exhaled. "Really?" "Yes," he turned to her. "Get ready immediately. We are going to your uncle's, but he won't give her up voluntarily, and I don't intend to ask permission." Tristan's voice was cold as steel. "Your mother is a free woman, a widow. The Earl has no legal power over her. We will simply take her." Aurora looked at him, not believing her ears. He was really ready to do this for her, for a woman he didn't even know. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." He approached, took her by the chin, forcing her to look into his eyes. "Don't thank me. It is my duty. You are my wife. Your family is now my concern." But in his eyes she saw more than duty. Something warm, almost tender. An hour later they were ready to leave. Aurora, dressed in a strict dress of dark blue muslin, gathered her hair in a simple bun. No jewelry, no luxury. She didn't want to show her uncle how her life had changed, didn't want to give him extra reason for malice. Tristan was also dressed simply, but still looked imposing. Black frock coat, white shirt, tall boots. A cane with a silver knob, not for support, but for weight in a strike if needed. They rode in silence. The carriage rolled through familiar streets. Approaching Earl Rutland's mansion, Aurora looked out the window, recognizing every turn, every building. 3 months ago, she fled from here in terror, and now she was returning as a viscountess, the wife of an influential man. Irony of fate. The carriage stopped at the gates. Tristan got out first, offering her his hand. They climbed the steps, and Tristan decisively pulled the bell. The door was opened by a footman, the very one who once looked at Aurora with contempt. Now his eyes widened in surprise. "Viscount Oakley! Lady Oakley, we didn't expect—" "Announce to the Earl that I demand a meeting." Tristan cut him off. "Immediately." The footman hurried inside. Aurora and Tristan entered the hall, the very one where she had lived 3 years in humiliation. Now it seemed smaller, dimmer, or had she changed? Earl Rutland appeared a few minutes later. His face was red with anger. His eyes flashed with malice. "You," he hissed. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" "We came for my wife's mother," Tristan answered calmly. "She is moving in with us." "Why is that?" The Earl came closer, looming. "She is my ward, lives on my charity. She is a widow, an adult woman. You have no power over her." Tristan didn't retreat a step. "And I have every right to take her." "And you have no rights." "I have the right to protect my wife's family." Tristan's voice became quieter, more dangerous. "And if you try to stop me, I will go to court, present proof of cruel treatment. I have enough witnesses." The Earl turned it even more purple. "You wouldn't dare try to stop me." Silence hung in the hall, ringing, tense. Aurora stood next to Tristan, feeling her heart pounding. Her uncle looked at them with hatred, clenching and unclenching his fists. "Take her," he hissed finally. "Take that sickly old woman. One less mouth to feed. But no, you will both pay me for this humiliation." "Try," Tristan answered evenly. "And now lead us to her." The Earl turned and strode toward the stairs. They followed him up, higher, to the attic. A narrow staircase, low ceiling, smell of dampness. Uncle pushed a door at the end of the corridor. "Here is your treasure." Aurora entered the closet and froze. Her mother lay on a narrow bed by the wall, tiny, emaciated, pale as chalk. Her hair, once chestnut, was now almost gray. Eyes closed, breathing raspy. "Mama," whispered Aurora, running to the bed. "Mama, it's me, Aurora." The woman slowly opened her eyes, gray, faded, but recognizing her daughter. Her lips twitched in a weak smile. "Aurora, you came?" "Yes, Mama, we came for you. You are moving in with us." Aurora took her mother's cold hand, squeezing it. "Everything will be all right, I promise." Tristan approached, appraisingly looking at the sick woman. "Can she walk herself?" "No." Aurora shook her head. "She is too weak." "Then I will carry her." He carefully lifted Aurora's mother in his arms. She was light, like a bird, wrapped in the blanket that lay on the bed. "Gather her things," he ordered Aurora. There were few things. Several dresses, a shawl, a box with letters. Aurora packed everything into a small carpet bag and followed Tristan. Earl Rutland stood in the hall, watching their departure with a face distorted by rage. "You will regret this," he shouted after them. "I will destroy you both." Tristan didn't even turn around. They left the mansion, and the coachman helped settle Aurora's mother in the carriage. Aurora sat next to her, supporting her, wrapping her in the blanket. The carriage moved, taking them away from that cursed house. At home, Aurora's mother was settled in one of the guest rooms on the first floor, bright, spacious, overlooking the garden. The best doctor in London was called. He examined the patient, shook his head, and delivered a verdict. Consumption, advanced stage, but with proper care, rest, and good nutrition, she could live another few years. A few years, not much, but more than nothing. Aurora spent whole days with her mother, read to her, talked, simply sat nearby. Her mother gradually recovered, gained weight, began to smile. One evening when Aurora was adjusting her pillows, her mother took her hand. "Your husband, he is a kind man." Aurora raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Why did you decide that?" "He took me in, didn't have to, doesn't even know me, but did it for you." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "That is love, daughter, even if he hasn't realized it himself yet." Aurora remained silent, but her heart clenched with hope. Love? No, that was too soon, too incredible. But maybe, someday. September brought coolness and rain. London washed itself, cleared of dust, breathed more freely. Aurora's mother grew strong enough to walk in the garden, leaning on a cane. Aurora took her to the greenhouse, showed her the roses. "Your mother-in-law was talented," noted her mother, carefully touching a white petal. "These roses are a work of art." "Now I care for them," said Aurora. "Mr. Parker teaches me." "You do well." Her mother smiled. "You have changed, Aurora. Become more confident, stronger." "I had to, otherwise I wouldn't have survived." "But you didn't just survive, you are thriving." Her mother squeezed her hand. "I am proud of you." Words Aurora had waited for all her life. That same evening, she was sitting in the library reading when Tristan entered. He looked tired. The day had been long, full of business meetings. "Your mother looks well," he remarked, pouring himself some brandy. "Yes, thanks to you," he shrugged. "I just did what I had to." "You did more." Aurora put down the book, rising. "You gave her life hope. You—" She didn't finish because he came closer, too close, so close she felt the warmth of his body, the smell of cigars, and something else purely masculine. "Aurora," he uttered quietly, "I need to tell you something." Her heart stopped. "When I married you, it was revenge, cold calculation, a desire to hurt those who hurt me." He touched her cheek carefully as if afraid she would disappear. "But over these months, something changed. You changed. Or I don't know." Aurora held her breath, daring not to move. "You became part of my life," he continued. "Not a burden, not an instrument of revenge, but a person I wait for, whose opinion I seek, whose presence makes a house a home." He leaned closer, so close their lips almost touched. "I don't ask you to love me. I know that would be too much, but maybe we could try to start over. Not as strangers bound by a vow, but as two people who want to know each other." Aurora looked into his eyes, dark, full of doubt and hope. "I already know you," she whispered. "Since the first day, and I like what I see." He smiled a real warm smile, which she saw so rarely, and kissed her, tenderly, carefully, as if she were a jewel he was afraid to break. Aurora responded to the kiss, wrapping her arms around his neck. It wasn't passion, not yet. It was a promise, the beginning of something new. When they pulled apart, Tristan pressed his forehead to hers. "Give me time. I don't know how to love. I forgot how. But with you, I want to learn again." "We have time," Aurora answered quietly. "A whole lifetime." They stood embracing in the silence of the library. Outside the window, rain fell, drumming on the glass. Somewhere in the garden, roses rustled under the drops. And in the house, hope settled. Quiet, timid, but real. October blossomed with gold and crimson. The trees in the garden dressed in autumn attire. The air became fresh and clear. Aurora's mother grew strong enough to come down for breakfast, for the first time in many years sitting at the same table with family. Tristan was courteous with her, attentive, asked about her health, ensured she had everything she needed. Aurora saw how her mother blossomed from this attention, not because she sought praise, but because she finally felt like a person, not a burden. "You and your daughter are very alike," Tristan remarked one day at lunch. Her mother smiled. "She takes after her father. He was also stubborn and honest, didn't know how to lie." "Useful qualities," agreed Tristan, casting a look full of warmth at Aurora. After lunch, they walked in the garden, all three, slowly adjusting to her mother's pace. The air smelled of fallen leaves and late roses. "Are you happy, daughter?" asked her mother quietly when Tristan stepped away to check something with the gardener. Aurora looked at her husband, at his tall figure straight back, confident movements. Remembered his kiss, his words. his promises to learn to love. Yes, Mama, she answered, I am happy, and I will be even happier. Because ahead lay life. Their life, not ideal, not simple, but theirs. And that was enough. That evening when everyone had gone to their rooms, Aurora stood in the greenhouse. She often came here before sleep to check the roses, water them, simply be in silence. The door opened and Tristan entered, without his tailcoat, in just a shirt with an unbuttoned collar, his hair slightly disheveled. I knew I would find you here, he said. You have studied me well. I try. He approached, stopped beside her. Aurora, I thought about what I told you in the library, about a beginning, about trying. She turned to him. And I want to do it right. He took her hand, brought it to his lips, kissed it unhurriedly. Getting to know you, allowing you to know me, building something real. I would like that, whispered Aurora. He pulled her closer, embracing her. She pressed against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, steady, strong. Thank you, he said into her hair. For existing, for agreeing back then in the carriage, for staying. I'm not going anywhere, she answered. I promise. They stood embracing among the roses. Beyond the glass roof of the greenhouse shone the stars, distant, cold, but beautiful. Somewhere deep in the garden, an owl hooted. The wind rustled in the foliage, and in the greenhouse, two people, once bound by revenge and despair, held on to each other, promising themselves a future. A year later, Aurora stood by the bedroom window, watching the sun slowly rise over the hills. She wore a light nightgown of white cambric. Her hair was loose, falling onto her shoulders in a dark waterfall. One hand rested on her rounded belly, an involuntary tender gesture that had become a habit over the last months. 6 months. In 3, she would become a mother. This thought still seemed incredible. A year ago, she was nobody, a poor relative escaping beatings. And now she is Viscountess Oakley, expecting an heir, standing at the window of her husband's country estate and feeling truly at home. Behind her there was movement. Tristan woke up. She heard the rustle of sheets, a quiet swing, then his footsteps, bare feet on the wooden floor. Arms wrapped around her from behind, carefully, gently. Tristan pressed against her back, kissing her shoulder. Can't sleep again, he muttered in a sleepy voice. The baby is kicking, smiled Aurora, Yippo, covering his hands with hers. Must have inherited your stubbornness or your energy. He placed his palm on her belly, feeling the movement under the skin. Strong will be an excellent horseman. Or horsewoman, corrected Aurora. Or horsewoman, he agreed with a chuckle. I don't care, as long as it's born healthy. They stood embracing, watching a new day blossom. Oakley Manor in Kent had become their refuge. They moved here at the end of winter, escaping London bustle and gossip. An old mansion surrounded by a park, gardens, and forests. Here it was quiet, peaceful. Here one could breathe deeply. Aurora's mother lived with them. Her health had improved significantly. Fresh air, peace, and care did their job. She grew stronger, began to smile again, even gained a little weight. The doctor said the consumption had retreated, though not disappeared completely. But now she had years, maybe many years, enough to see grandchildren. What are you thinking about? Asked Tristan, kissing her temple. About how much has changed in a year. Yes, he agreed, much. A year ago they were strangers bound by a marriage of convenience. He sought revenge, she salvation. Both got what they wanted, but got more too. Somewhere between autumn rains and winter snows, between spring blossoming and summer heat, they fell in love, not immediately, not with a flash of passion like in novels. Slowly, gradually, as a seed sprouts in the earth, conversation after conversation, glance after glance, touch after touch. Aurora remembered that evening in January when Tristan first asked permission to enter her bedroom, stood on the threshold, unsure, vulnerable, so unlike the cold Viscount she knew before. May I stay? He asked quietly. Not for, just to be near. She nodded, moving the blanket aside. He lay down next to her, hugged her, and they just lay in the dark, listening to each other's breathing. That was the beginning. Then there were other nights, closer, more intimate, when words were replaced by kisses, kisses by caresses, and fear and awkwardness dissolved in warmth and tenderness. Tristan turned out to be an attentive lover, patient, caring, not rushing her. He learned to read her body, her desires, and she learned to respond, to trust, to surrender. And when finally they became truly close, not only in bodies but in souls, Aurora realized, this is love. Not loud words, not vows on knees, but this quiet, deep feeling when you know you can no longer be without this person. I love you, whispered Tristan now, pressing his lips to her neck. She closed her eyes, smiling. I know, and I love you. Saying it had become easy, natural, like breathing.